What's that sound? It's for amusement only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast. Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge, and it's a very excited Nick Baldridge because just a few short days ago, I finished the very last game in the multi-bingo. Yep, but before we get into that, let's acknowledge for a moment that this is episode 400. I began this project, announced it publicly anyway, on episode 365. At that point, I switched to a bi-weekly release to allow me time to work on the multi-bingo. And in only 35 episodes, or 70 weeks, I was able to complete the final game. I'm pretty excited. I've finished the very last of the basic game programming for the 138th game. That's a lot of games with a lot of very specific game logic. So each of the games should be playable. However, ones that require unique or oddball playfields have not been tested in the game yet. I have a lengthy period of testing ahead of me. But this is a huge deal. Because bug fixing is one thing, but figuring out how I'm going to do something like, let's take Big Wheel or Magic Ring, for example. Those games are so unique and in the pantheon of the 138 different U.S. manufactured bingos, it's pretty insane to think about how you would implement that in solid state, but it's been done. Now, Big Wheel and Magic Ring had partial solid state. They were hybrid games that used the solid state mechanism to detect your winners and to allow for the double or nothing play. But in my game, I just have to keep track of the state of a whole bunch of different things all at once and constantly recheck the state as you rotate the wheel. The big thing that messes those games up as far as programming logic goes is the fact that you can rotate the wheel after the fifth ball has landed. If that were not the case, the logic could be reduced by at least 20 lines, I'd say, maybe more. There's a whole lot of extra stuff that goes into having to refigure every time you press a button. But regardless, it is done. It's been tested on my development computer, which is separate from the actual game, and every game scores appropriately. It plays red letter games appropriately. It allows for moving number features to work properly. It displays the graphics in the right spots at the right times. So I'm feeling pretty darn good about that. So what have I been doing with all this free time? After I finished that up, I switched right over to working on Robo-Frenzy. And for Robo-Frenzy, what I've been doing is cutting my own cabinet. I based the design on Penny Pitch, which is a Williams game, or Ringer, or Darts. Those were alternate games with the same play, using the same style of cabinet. And Ryan Clater, who I am developing Robo-Frenzy with, provided me measurements from his Penny Pitch, and I started cutting just a couple days ago. I am not a woodworker. I'm not very good with sawing stuff. I can measure stuff, I can do math, but cutting things, I've got a circular saw, and that's pretty much it. So, well, I do have a manual miter box, but that doesn't really count, and it certainly won't help me with this. So my father-in-law needed some computer work, and I said, hey, while I'm out there, do you mind if I use your table saw? And got out there, and he wanted to see, what I was planning to do, and he offered to help me with it. And then we realized very quickly that table saw wasn't going to do the trick, because there was no kind of bench built up around it. So running these huge sheets of plywood through it just not possible. So, my father-in-law, who is a woodworker, and he's actually quite good, especially at adaptation. So, figuring out what to do with the tools that you have. So, rather than run everything through the table saw and worry about getting straight cuts, especially with these large pieces of wood, what we ended up doing was building a fence and then running a circular saw along that fence. The fence is clamped to the wood at specific measurements to allow the saw to travel past, and that lets you make straight cuts, and it looks pretty darn good. So I haven't assembled the cab yet. This weekend is going to be fairly busy, but I'm hopeful that next week I'll have some time to sit down and start gluing and nailing. So I'm assembling the cab in the style of penny pitch ringer darts, and that basically just use brads to tack in the sides of the cab, hold it all together while the glue dried, and there's got to be some glue in there. So that's what I'm going to do. We'll see how that holds up. I've got a back door cut. It's going to function like a bingo back door, so it'll be hinged, and if I'm able to locate some bingo hinges, then it'll work exactly like a bingo back door, as in you'll be able to take it off of the game and do your work. And unlike a bingo, what I'll do is make Jones plugs directly on the opposite side, on the interior of the game to hold the door on, and then you'll be able to take the door completely away from the game and service it if you choose. That should make life pretty easy, I think, and we'll see how that goes. Now, the depth of the cab is kind of interesting. I'm curious to see how this is going to work, because the depth of a ringer darts penny pitch is only approximately 15 inches at the widest part. That should be good, but it doesn't leave a whole lot of room for components like multiple gears turning the player control, or coin box, coin door area, or any of that. So that's part of why I wanted to build the cab first, is to see if there would be enough room in which to build this thing. If not, this is the prototype cab, and I'll cut another one up using the techniques that my father-in-law taught me. And I thank him very much for doing that, because there's no way that I would have gotten this kind of consistent quality from doing it my normal, terrible way. So that help was incredibly appreciated. I should also mention it's been like almost 100 degrees here in Richmond for the past few days, so he's really done a lot outdoors with me at a time when both of us probably should not have been outside, but it all worked out, and I'm staring at the wood right now. I think it looks great. I can't wait to get it put together and primed up so that I can start installing components and then figure out what I'm going to do. Now, the reason for that, the interior of the door needs to be primed so that I don't have to remove all the equipment when I go to paint it. Instead, I'll affix labels and do all that stuff. I'm doing initial layout right now. Once I have the coin door cut, which I don't right now, I hadn't settled yet on the type of coin door I'm going to use, but I believe that's settled now. I am going to use an 80s style Bally coin door, which contains a free play switch, built into it, and it's stainless steel. Robots love it, so we'll see how that goes. I've got to locate some trim that goes on the outside of the coin door, but that should be good. And then a coin box, and should be able to build that up. The big deal is that I want it to be able to accept coins like a commercial piece of equipment, because I want to build it to commercial specs, basically. So, we'll see how that goes. And I'll be sure to report when I have more to report. In other news, I have been working on different cosmetic pieces of the multi-bingo, and I have some very exciting news for part of that, which I will release at the appropriate time. I don't yet have anything to report, but I've got some good stuff coming, so please look forward to that. Code. Where is the code, Nick? Well, good news there as well. I went through and prepped the code and pushed it up to the public repository a few days ago. So if you've been waiting on the code to see how I implemented something or to make your own multi-bingo, it's there along with the schematic. I have not yet typed up a manual, but that's on my to-do list, and I will upload that when it's ready. And please, if you take a look at it, let me know. If you think it's, worthwhile, or if there's improvements to be made. It's licensed under GPL 3, with the idea being, if you make any improvements for your own game, push them back and let me take a look at them, and if they're good, solid improvements, I'll integrate them. What's left to do? That's really the big question. On the code side, all the games are feature complete. As I mentioned, they work and score appropriately. The only thing that is not wired up appropriately is the coin flash graphics. When you drop a coin in the game, it does not go through each position on the spotting disc like it does in the real game and give you a little show. Instead, what I've done is wired up these little animation functions that essentially pick a number at random and display one part of the animation. The reason for that is really more to do with the slowness of the display processor and less with the fact that it couldn't be done. In fact, I know exactly how I'm going to do it. The problem is that I need something that's doing 3D rendering instead of 2D, basically. Right now, my renderer is CPU bound, and unfortunately, the CPU can't keep up with sending out that display refresh call to the big monitor and read all the switch hits appropriately. Now, theoretically, they'd be banked and sent over from the P3 rock, but the computer is basically spending just a ridiculous amount of time on this and has probably accepted the switch hit, but is doing nothing about it. So what happens is all your timing gets thrown off. Let's take a simple example like the ball count. The way that I have the ball count wired up is like the early games, and that may or may not be a problem. It hasn't been yet, really, but the problem with the graphics being decoupled like that is every time you leave the ball gate, it increments the ball count. This doesn't work at all like the later games, which used a timer unit along with the trough switches to determine the ball count. That's much, much more accurate because you know exactly how many balls are sitting on switches, and you can use that coupled with the position of the timer to know how many balls have been shot. Well, I can't use something like the list of numbers that have been hit because spotted numbers exist, and not each of those triggers a relay. Some of them directly add to the list of numbers that have been hit. So can't use that. And so what I'm left with is reading a switch hit, and that's the ball gate. That's what I settled on. Well, problem there, you hit the ball gate really fast, and the game is still attempting to draw some bit of animation. Let's take the magic number from the late 6 cards like Dixieland, Nashville, and Continental. When you shoot the ball through the gate, the magic number motor engages, and it will stop at random on 1 or 2 of 5 different positions. Or is it 7? Anyway, it lands on 1 or 2 numbers. but it goes through and does this cool animation. Well, unfortunately, while the animation is going, if you fire another ball, the game gets all confused and doesn't read the second ball as having been fired, so it lifts a third ball, but only counts it as ball number 2. That's really where the problem comes in. You can have the same problem with animations when starting a game. So I tell people, and on my instruction card that I wrote for the machine, if you push the red button a whole bunch of times before it lifts the first ball, it can get confused as it's trying to bank and display those animations and continue to lift balls to the shooter lane, even though 1 ball, 2 balls, maybe even 3 balls already exist in the shooter lane. It'll keep going, in fact, even if there are all 8 balls lifted. So that's a problem, and preempting the animation is something that I intend to do, and hopefully I can do that before York. Last year I didn't have that written in, and this year I might not. It all depends on how far I get on everything between now and then. But that's just an example of a bug, a huge bug that I know exists, and if anyone wants to take a look at that and take a stab at it, definitely be my guest, because I'm not certain exactly how I'm going to tackle it, and if I can tackle it in 2D, that's even better. 3D, I have, a powerful enough 3D chip in the computer that's driving it that it won't be a problem, but there's almost certainly a way that I can preempt the rendering and allow switch hits to keep happening. I'm using a delay method. That's not delay enough, unfortunately. So once I figure that out, that'll unlock the last mystery of the code, and I'll get that going. And beyond that, I need to make score and instruction cards for every game. The score and instruction cards are mostly available online, and where they're not, I can certainly make my own. They have to be made to a custom size and pushed. And the way that I do it, I have them in my repository. Those are the only graphics along with lit elements that I push in the public repository. But I take those and push them to the Raspberry Pi's cards, and then they'll load up appropriately. Now I push all of them for every single game to the Pis. I only use 2 different Pis, but I use multiple screens. At least that's the plan. Those screens are pretty expensive, so and because I'm really cheap, I've not bought more than 1 set, but I need to do that. I was looking into them a few weeks ago, and they were sold out. I had a minor heart attack, and then looked again a few weeks later, and they were back in stock. So I think it's just one of those things that they sell through occasionally. So you, member of the bingo playing or bingo interested public, where can you find this machine? If you're not interested in code at all, I apologize for the last 17 minutes, or other things that I'm building, and you just want to play the game, that's totally fine. In fact, I welcome and encourage that. I am bringing the game next to the York show. It's also known as the White Rose Game Room Show, and that's September 29th and 30th at the York Fairgrounds. Please come out, give it a go. Let me know what you think. Tell me how bad you think the display animations are. And, let me know what you think. It's been a labor of love, and I have really enjoyed pretty much this entire process so far. But by far the best thing is the public reaction. So, come out and give it a shot and let me know what you think. I am happy to hear what you think. And with that in mind, thank you to everybody who has helped with this game. Everybody from longtime bingo collectors, Dennis Dodell, Vic Camp, Jeffrey Lawton, and newer bingo collectors, Robert Madel, some of the other folks that I've been talking to and will hopefully be talking to on the podcast soon. Everybody who's provided me pictures and everybody who has provided me with technical advice, including custom pinball folks. Ryan Clater, commissioned him for various artwork, which you'll see at the York show if you come out there. I've also put up a picture or two in the multi-bingo thread and on Facebook and Instagram and so forth. So check that out if you get a chance. That is kind of the default background image, and I think it's pretty pitch perfect appropriate. So what's going on now? Well, as I say, Robo-Frenzy, and I'm catching up on some service calls that I had backlogged, and just generally getting into the summer here. It's always kind of crazy, but things are going great, and I'm really excited. I just can't express how excited I am that initial push for the code is finished. Anyway, as I say, I hope you all enjoy it. If you come out and play, let me know what you think, and we'll go from there. All right, well, you know what that means. It's time for the Year of Flipperless. Today's example is 1938's Exhibit Coney Island. And Coney Island is themed after New York entertainment destination. What makes Coney Island the pinball machine, and this is only one of many games that was named Coney Island, what makes it unique are a couple things. First of all, there's a motorized backbox animation, and that's a Ferris wheel. It starts in motion as soon as you push in your coin, so it's rotating through the whole game. It's huge on the back glass as well. Unfortunately, no color pictures exist of the game, no video that I've found, so some of this is going to be speculation based on the flyer and what I can see there, but I will say that it is really quite cool looking. You've got kind of spotlights going up around the Ferris wheel and point values which are located on the cars of the Ferris wheel, and then the larger point values in circles on a banner which is shaped like a flag at the top of the back box. The playfield itself is apparently made of metal. The flyer says it's a smooth rolling chrome Miro metal playing field, and up near the top, well, I'll just say it looks like a ramp. If you manage to land in a particular spot, it appears that the ball will roll over this ramp. Otherwise, it's funneled across and down. And this is in kind of the upper left corner where you'd expect the rebound rubber to be. So, on top of that, there are multiple bumpers on the playing field. These are passive bumpers, spring bumpers. 13 is what I count. The 13 bumpers are individually lit, and they have chrome caps, according to the flyer. And this game must be blinding when it's being played with all the lights on a metal playing field, along with the lights in the back box and the rotating Ferris wheel. I think this would be quite an attractive game. Now, as far as the metal playing field goes, that, of course, can cause its own problems because it's essentially a big conductive plane as opposed to one made out of wood. I wasn't aware that Exhibit had experimented with this. I knew Bally had. They put out a couple games. One of them was named Zephyr. But this is the first I'd heard of Exhibit doing the same. So either the flyer is vague, which this wouldn't be the first time, and what they mean is that ramp is actually made of metal, or the playfield is metal. So I'm not sure which is what. But it's pretty neat. I will say that I would love to see one of these. If anybody happens to have one, snap a photo or two and send them over to the IPDB. It would be great to know exactly how that Ferris wheel motor functioned, and if it changed the position of anything on the back box, if the actual cars moved as well as what I'm talking about. It probably doesn't, but one can dream. And aside from that, I just wanted to say, thank you to everybody who has helped again, as well as those who came out to play the multi-bingo last year at York. All your support, everybody's support, whether you've just been following along, whether you've helped out with photos and information, including folks like Bingo Butch and Jim Willing, or my friend Steve Smith, who helped build the drawer and was instrumental in testing that first game. Whether you've come out to try it, like Phil Bogema, who came all the way out here just to try the game, and he provided fantastic insight into the way the mixers and spotting unit should be stopping, which caused me to go back and really examine how my games functioned, and also really, really, truly helped get my portioning more correct. Thank you all very much. And thank you for following along with the podcast. I'm going to continue to do that. And next up, I'll be documenting, of course, Robo-Frenzy in my same scattered way. So, that's all for tonight. Thank you very much for listening. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com, or you can call me on the Bingos line. That's 724-BINGOS1, 724-246-4671. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, via RSS, on Facebook, on Twitter, at Bingo Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram, also at Bingo Podcast. Or you can listen to me on my website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.